Help, we're stuck on a desert island. The only thing that could possibly help us is playing some board games. Time to do a board game draft.
In today's board game draft, the Murphs will be drafting games they would bring to a desert island. The rules and parameters for this draft are as follows. 1. Each Murph will get to draft 5 games. Each game may only be drafted once. We are assuming on this island that you would have people to play with, so you don't only have to choose solo games. You will also have all needed technology to play your games. If your game is an app-assisted game, you will have a device that could assist you with that, but apparently this device can't help you get off this island. We're also assuming that on this island, your survival is already taken care of. Therefore, you don't need to do things like burn your games for fuel. On this island, there are no D20s allowed, and so there's no drafting RPGs like Dungeons & Dragons. And those are the guidelines for this particular draft. Let's go to the studio to figure out who will get the first overall pick. And the first pick goes to Michael Lee Murphy, who will have the first overall pick.
With the first overall pick in the draft, I can see no game better than a game that has everything in it: worker placement, tile placement, and it might even teach me how to make a boat and sail to a new island. This is A Feast for Odin. Just pick your favorite game. All right.
The first overall pick, A Feast for Odin, comes out of Z-Man University. This is a Viking-themed worker placement game with a whole lot of different places to put your workers. It's a true sandbox. Every game you can do something different.
For the second overall pick, I want to pick a game that has infinite possibilities. And sure, you might think it's a boring choice, but I choose a deck of cards, specifically the Beth Sobel River and Stones deck of cards. We agree that is a cheat, right?
The River and Stone playing card set is drafted out of the Beth Sobel Institute for Art and Design. This is a beautifully illustrated standard 52 card set. And with this game, you can play thousands upon thousands of different games. The board game draft is brought to you in part by Tasty Glue. If you're gonna paste on your theme, you might as well use Tasty Glue.
The Brothers Murph do not condone the consumption of glue.
Going third in the draft, this game is all about charting the lands, charting the seas, and indeed the stars above. This is Wayfarers of the South Tigris.
Wayfarers of the South Tigris is drafted out of northern New Zealand, Garfield University. In this tableau building game, players are trying to find out the circumference of the Earth. You will do this by gaining land cards and water cards, and you will be charting the sky as well.
For the fourth overall pick, I will pick a small game that you can play over and over and over again. I will choose The Crew Mission Deep Sea.
The Crew Mission Deep Sea is drafted out of the prestigious Cosmos College of Technology and Design. In this cooperative trick-taking game, players will have different tasks that they must follow. These tasks will dictate what cards you can and cannot take throughout the game. If all players manage to complete their tasks, they win the game.
The number 5 overall pick in this draft is a game all about tile laying and figuring out ecosystems and animals. This is Cascadia.
Cascadia is drafted out of Flat Out Forest University. In this tile-laying game, players will be drafting different landscape tiles and then animal discs that will go onto those tiles. Each landscape tile can only house certain animals, and each animal will score differently at the end of the game.
The 6th overall pick requires a little bit of technology, and I really like to play this game solo, and this is going to be The Search for Planet X.
The Search for Planet X is drafted out of the University of Renegade Games. In this deduction games, players are trying to find Planet X. But there are lots of things in the sky like asteroids, comets, gas clouds, and more. Throughout the game, you'll be getting the location of different objects. And through this, you can deduce where Planet X is.
This game requires a little bit of technology, and I also like to play it only alone. This is Turing Machine. I knew that would be on his list. I absolutely knew that would be on his list.
Turing Machine is drafted out of the French Le Scorpion Masque Université. In this deduction game, players will be trying to find a 3-number sequence. They will do this by testing their sequence against different rules that the sequence must follow. By testing it with these rules, players will be able to deduce the 3-number sequence, but can they do it before everybody else? The Canadian broadcast of the Board Game Draft is brought to you by Foster the Meeple. Oh, Canada!
We only have, at this point, kind of a small portion of the 8th overall pick, but I will choose a game with infinite possibility, in the quadrillions. That is Legendary, a Marvel deck building game.
It's a good pick. Good pick.
Legendary, a Marvel deck building game, comes out of the Upper Deck College of Heroes. In this deck building game, players will be playing as 5 Marvel heroes and they'll be going against a sinister mastermind. The mastermind has a scheme that they're trying to enforce, and they're not alone as they'll have villains that are coming into the city. Can you work together to defeat the mastermind before time runs out?
My final pick in the draft in the 9th overall is a game that is meant for one player only, and it is set on a deserted island. This is Friday.
Friday is drafted out of 2F Spiel University. Friday is a solo game where you're trying to help Robinson Crusoe, who is stranded on a desert island. And Robinson Crusoe is a big old dum-dum and is really bad at everything.
I had to think long and hard about the 10th overall pick. But we're going to be on this island for a very long time, so I need a very long game. The 10th overall pick, I choose the Campaign for Northern Africa.
The Campaign for North Africa, Desert War 1940 to 1943, comes out of Simulations Publications University. This is a meticulously detailed war simulation that takes over 1,500 hours to complete. Let's face it, you've got a lot of time on this island.
All right, so that is the draft. Now we're going to be discussing our different draft picks, kind of the discussion part of
What was it? What were we
draft.
thinking? You know, were there any points where you got a little worried you had going to have something stolen, all that
So
stuff?
one thing let's start with here is like, how did you go about approaching the draft? Because I realized as we were drafting games, like, oh, we went about this in a very different way.
Well, yeah, I mean, you took a deck of cards, so you clearly had like, I need to be able to play with this forever.
That was my whole thing. I was like, what are games that I think are pretty much infinitely playable, at least in my opinion.
Sure.
And that's basically how I chose all the games on my list, plus the ones that didn't make it.
I went more for the route of like my
seem to go for,
favorites.
like,
But all of my favorites are games that I also think have a ton of replayability.
I thought about
a lot of stuff to explore.
I thought about choosing a Feast for Odin first, just to take it from me, because I do think that one, you could just play again.
On my
and again.
island, I had to have time to try every single possible. I'd have all the animals in one game, then every island in another. I could just try things. There's like a billion worker placement spots. You could solo it. So that's what I was thinking with the overall pick. I'm like, it's my favorite game. And I think there's so much to explore. There's like 3,000 occupation cards in that game, of which I've only ever used like 20. So it's like, it's going to take me forever to get through those cards.
That's most Uwe games, right? It's like you're going to get so much extra content that you'll just eventually, I guess,
built-in variability.
But yeah, I definitely went in the replayability era. Like, I didn't choose Viticulture because Viticulture is my favorite game, but I don't think I can play Viticulture on a desert island forever. Whereas a lot of these other games, I honestly think I want the kind of diversity within that game itself. So your first overall pick, again, was Feast Road, which you kind of already talked about.
You know, it's like,
you can play it pretty much forever, and it's your favorite.
And so you did a cheat. I want to be honest. If there's a point of contention, you cheated with a deck of cards, which I did not think would be legal.
Blown away you didn't choose a bet.
Nick did not tell me the stipulations.
It's a tabletop game. It's not like an RPG.
It's not a tabletop game. It's a couple pieces of paper.
But then neither is any card game. Are you kidding me? There's no board or anything like that?
No.
You're playing at a table, not playing in my hands.
No, that's not the... you're just trying to justify. I want in the comments if you think that was a sneaky cheat.
I have thousands and thousands and thousands of games.
Sneaky cheat. You're like, I'm going to get a deck of cards, I'm going to find a palm tree, I'm going to poke a bunch of holes in it, now I got cribbage. And I'm like, no. Hey,
I can do whatever I want on my desert island, okay? I think a deck of cards was great. I chose a deck of cards
I'm just jealous of the pick, to be honest. I was just like, well, that's perfect.
Yeah. Replayability is the really answer.
Yeah.
There's, again, thousands and thousands of games you can play. You could just invent games with a deck of cards. I mean, you could just do whatever you want. To me, that seemed like the very clear first pick.
Yeah.
I was astonished you didn't have it.
I should have thought in that direction. I chose Wayfarers of the South Tigris as my next
one.
That
one blew me away. I was surprised you chose
that
one.
Because there's so many cards. I'm like, well, again, I'm thinking like I could try to find every kind of silly synergy and combo with all the different types of cards you can get.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, Wayfarers has been so far to this point of just trying out different stuff. And so in my mind, out of all the Garfield games, it seems to be the one that's the most elastic and kind of variable. So I was like, let me go for that.
It is definitely, that one and Paladins are the ones where you can like just choose a direction and go that way.
Yeah.
You know? And so
and
that
Wayfarers
one
just seems really open.
Yeah, which is good if you're trying to play something over and over and over again. it's like you kind of want something generally. I mean, that's one thing about Face for Odin is very, very open, right? It's just a big sandbox.
Yeah.
So my second game, and I was again, I thought this might be your number one, was the Crew Mission Deep Sea.
I had thought about it.
And I was, because that's one where, again, kind of falls into the deck of cards.
I should have chosen that. I should have picked that.
Because you can just play really any trick-taking game. Spades, hearts, people play for their entire lives. And the Crew Mission Deep Sea is just like so good, especially with the way that the cards work, the tasks work in Crew Mission Deep Sea. You could just randomly grab a couple and go with it, and you can just play, and there's a huge stack of them. So you can play a game thousands and thousands and thousands.
You don't even need
times.
like a logbook with the missions. You could just say like, we're playing difficulty 7, draw those cards out, and you'll probably never come across the exact same set of like objectives twice in a row.
But even then, like I honestly think, even if you only had like 10 of those task cards, you could play the crew. Because think about trick-taking games and a lot of card games, like I almost put Scout in my list. I didn't.
Yeah.
But because the whole thing is like, how are you going to deal with what's in your hand?
What you got.
That's the whole point of trick-taking games. So the crew, like, even if you didn't have those tasks, you could play it over and over and over again. So with all the different tasks, I think that is one of the most infinitely playable games.
Yeah.
But I almost put Scout because the whole point is like you're trying to deal with what's in your hand and how are you going to deal with this.
I think I got scared of having to teach my made-up desert inhabitants with me trick-taking. So I was like, I'm not going to do that. Fair. But they also are not real. So I probably shouldn't have worried so much about that. But I was just taking the task at hand very seriously.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't choose a deck of cards, which I'm still mad about. So my next one was Cascadia.
Yep.
This is one that's just like, you know what? It's easy. It's tableable. You can play it over and over. This would be a game if I was on Desert Island. It would probably just always be sort of set up, and you could sort of just play it. You know, it's just one of those ones that's like smooth and goes down. It's not like very different from game to game. You do have like ways you can shuffle out the animals slightly, but like I just enjoy the puzzliness of that game, so I don't mind. It's just, again, it's such a replayable game to me. Yeah. That I was like, let me go for that.
And it's relaxing, right? It's a chill game.
I need to chill. I'm on an island drinking a coconut drink, man. I need to chill.
I almost chose like a Lanterns. I was like, I think Lanterns would get old if you were playing it like all the time. But one of the things I was like, I probably should have like a more chill game for like evenings on this lovely, I assume it's beautiful desert island.
Yeah. Cascadia to me is like open enough and easy enough, and there's just enough puzzly items to think about that it kind of scratches your itch but doesn't stress you out, and you can kind of just hit that again and again and again.
My number 3 was The Search for Planet X. Now, the reason I chose this one, I might have chosen Turing Machine. I just assumed it would have been gone by the time I got to this one. And I like Search for Planet X pretty much the same as Turing Machine. But because, again, this is run by an app, but again, it's one of those games where it's like Turing Machine, the app can just create infinite amount of different placements of things and different things to give you, and it's a deduction game, and it's like those kinds of deduction games you can just play again and again and again because the puzzle is different every single time.
Yeah.
Every time I'm like, where's Planet X? It could be in one of these.
It's beautiful.
That one also got a harder one, so maybe if I play it thousands of times, I can then play on the harder side, which has like 18 sectors and stuff. I'm like, this is a game that I'll just be able to play, I think, forever. Even if I was on, and you can play with other people, but I also really enjoy this playing solo, so like I can keep playing it forever. I was like, deduction games, I thought about playing like Black Sonata, but I was like, nah, Search Planet X is really, really my jam.
Yeah, that's a good pick. That's why I went for Turing Machine next. I was like, you know what? Don't let that go to waste. I figured maybe it'd be safe if you had chosen Search for Planet X, but both are good picks. And and Turing Machine, I just love the kind of cleanness of it. I think the fact that it is kind of this themeless, like find a number and the little punch hole cards and stuff, make it so replayable because it's just pure deduction and no real fluff or flair about it, and a really kind of awesome system with how the stacking of those cards to check your verifiers and stuff works. I think it's brilliant. And that's one that like literally has a daily puzzle you can do. Yeah. And then so on the daily puzzle, like one thing to note, like there's of the verifiers, there's like 1 through 22 on the daily puzzle are going to be the ones that show up. As they go up into the higher numbers, of which there's like 42 or so, they start getting crazier and crazier, where they start to give you less and less information, or information that can be easily confused because you can get a yes that's sort of like a yes, but you don't know if it's yes for this or yes for that and stuff. And so I'm like, man, if I like have time on my hands to do this puzzle over and over, and in theory I will get good at doing these.
Doing it right,
there's all sorts of crazy ways you can add on layers of difficulty to this game. Yeah. And so it's like, that's what's really appealing to me. Totally. Because of the cleanness of the design and the kind of themelessness of it. it's just like, okay, well, in year 5 of me being on this island on board, just ratchet up the difficulty on this to like insano mode and
that's the kind of thing, and that's like it's infinitely playable. It's so much variety. You can basically never play the same game twice.
Yeah,
because you can play that game millions of times, and that's one of the reasons why I chose my number 4, which was Legendary, a Marvel deck building game.
Dude,
because
that was a good pick. I'm like,
we only have at this point and again we're assuming that you're coming with any expansions the game has. So Feast for Odin, you're coming with the Norwegians expansion, right? Because we're on Desert Island, we're not limited on space, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, for me, like, with how much Legendary we have, I think at this point, like, less than half of it, because we haven't bought any new Legendary in a long time.
We have at most like half.
And at one point I calculated, I'm pretty sure it was in the quadrillions in terms of different, because there are over
like 100 heroes.
You only play with 5 of them. We have like 50 different masterminds. I think over 100 different schemes. When the schemes really change up the game,
they're kind of everything.
There's like 50 or 60 different villain groups. And so it's like you can choose the amount of different games you can have. Again, is like not infinite.
You will never, if you use a randomizer, you'll never.
I could play it 100 times a day, and I would never even come remotely close to playing the amount of different games you play. And so it's one of those things where, like, for me, and especially if you're adding in all the stuff we don't have, it's like, gosh, you could just play this over and over. And sure, like, the system is the same, but the game does feel very different if you're playing with different heroes, if you're playing different schemes, you're playing different masterminds. And so to me, it's just like, I was like, man, that one's got to be on there because of the sheer variability in the game.
I agree.
In terms of, like,
just between the heroes alone, the different types of combinations
and how they
you can
work
create,
together. Yeah,
there's a lifetime.
I was
to
just
explore.
like, I could play all day, every day for the rest of my life, and I'd make a dent in the amount of variations you could have.
I love it.
So then 5th,
my last pick, man, I chose Friday. I went for the super
hard,
that was
such a cheeky choice.
Solo game. It's about Robinson Crusoe who like washes up on an island. And he's big dum-dum.
Big old dum-dum.
And so I like that I can play a game that the different challenges you get, you can confront it with a wild animal.
Too close to home?
It probably would cause some existential dread, but I might become an expert.
Crying while playing.
Yeah, I might become so good at the game because I'm like, I've lived this experience.
And then you can get off the island.
Yeah, plus you might get to fight pirates at the end, which is what happens in that game.
God,
and so I was like, you know what, man? It's a solo game. I'm going to have some time on my hands. I could play that on a beach, and yeah, it might freak me out to play something so close to my exact like real life situation. But I was like, I can live with it. I'm going Friday.
Fair. That was a great choice.
Going Friday.
My number 5 was kind of a cheeky choice, but to be fair,
the cheekiest, really.
To be fair, though, like, isn't a horrible choice. This is the campaign for Northern Africa. If you don't know the campaign for Northern Africa, it is widely considered to be the longest, like, tabletop game, war game on the planet. I believe the average game of it takes like 1,500 hours to complete.
Who has that time in their life?
I don't know. I don't think anyone's ever finished it.
That's like a year, right?
But it's one of these like crazy heavy war games that's got like insane amount of logistics where you need to make sure like these troops over here have enough pasta because they'll get grumpy if they don't. Not that they're going to die. They're just going to get grumpy, and that's going to change. It's just one of those games. It's like
into the granular level.
Yeah, it's the absolute culmination of like crazy heavy war games getting crazier and crazier and crazier, and then they made this one.
Like this has to be a joke game, right? Like it's a joke, right? Like there's no way.
But it's one of those things like, well, let's say it does take 1,000 hours. It's like how many straight days of that? It's like, and then you can essentially roll it back, you know? And so I was like, I think it's a cheeky choice, but at the same time, it's like, this is a game that you could just play forever because it's the longest game on the planet. And so, I chose that one.
I got to give it up for that, man. That's a good
Mikey,
pick.
Is what just missed? So what was on your short list, essentially?
I had some.
Because I have 3 more on my short list.
I have, let's see, I've got, I think I have 4 more. No, 3. No, 4 more. I had cartographers.
I almost put cartographers.
Because that's a roll and write, a flip and fill. Where I on the app, I play it over and over and over and over again, and I never mind. I put Rajas of the Ganges. Really like it. It's a little too static.
That was my worry with it.
For like a desert island situation. I was like, but man, I love that game. And we do have both of the little mini module goodie boxes.
I was worried about it being too static. That was my worry too.
Yeah, it could be. I have Ginkopolis. Similarly, I was like, man, that's just a beautifully elegant game. But maybe for a desert island situation, I just want more stuff.
Yeah, totally. That's why I chose Legendary.
Fill out my furniture. And then the last one I had was Terraform Mars Ares Expedition.
Interesting.
That one I feel like you can keep building different engines and stuff, and that one you can play kind of over and over again. How about you? What were some like?
So the 3 that I had on my list, I'm surprised we didn't really have much. I had Turing Machine on my list, but that was good. But I was Search Planet X was because I was pretty sure that was going to go. my number 6 was War of the Ring, because it's a big game, it's a heavy game.
It's good.
But it's also a game that I do think if you're constantly just switching sides, especially with like some of the expansions, it's like I just think you could play that game forever. I agree. There's so many different cards, there's so many different strategies you can go for. I really think so. I put 5 Tribes on the list. Because that's a game that's so different based off of the state of the board. Like, just the way the grid makes up already makes the game so different. And then where the meeples go makes the game so
what
different.
opportunities you have available to you on a turn. Again, you talk about, like, you'll never have the same exact board layout, where all the locations are, and then what meeples go on them. You'll never repeat the same setup twice.
And then even if you did have the same setup, it's like now this time you took this as your first turn. So now the board is already different.
Right,
so things like that game is so infinitely playable, in my opinion, because the state of the board is always going to be different. And that's very, very fascinating to me. And then my last one I put on there, and this one maybe, I don't know how long you play, but I put Fire on there. Because just with the way the cards come out, and all the different ways you could use those cards to put stuff down, the construction of your deck, I think is so fascinating that I was like, you know what, I might put, that was there if like if you had taken like 3 of mine, that would be this. I was pretty sure it wasn't making the list.
The last alternate, you know, it's an undrafted free agent.
Honestly, both of us should probably have a chess set, because that's a game you could technically play forever if you don't hate yourself.
Burning for firewood, I guess.
But it's one of those things where it's like something like chess obviously is a good choice here.
Or some abstract game that's like actually
whatever.
good. Yeah.
But nonetheless, I think it was a pretty good draft. I think we both chose good games. Again, it surprised me like how different we kind of approached it, because we've talked about this before. It's like your favorite games and the games that will get played are 2 different things, right?
Agreed.
So I didn't choose my favorite games. I chose games that I think would be able to get played in this situation on a desert island for the rest of my life.
Yeah,
whereas you kind of went more just your favorite games, which also is totally valid.
But I try to do it with a lean, a lean on like variability and stuff. So Ginkopolis, number 2 overall game, was not on this list.
Yeah.
But I ultimately want to be able to play my favorite games as well.
Totally.
So it's like,
I almost chose just a bunch of mine.
If I didn't have Feast with me, I'd be on my desert island and be like, God, I want to play Feast Road. This sucks.
But nonetheless, that is going to be our draft. Let us know down in the comments below. We're going to choose our next draft right now, but down in the comments below, let us know what you would like to see us draft. It could be different mechanics, different designers, different publishers, whatever you want. What do you think would be an interesting topic?
Indeed.
And then make sure to like this video if you enjoyed this draft. It's the best way to support us is liking and subscribing.
Let us know what your thoughts are.
And let's figure out what the next draft is going to be.
All right, let's go to the magical spinner of doom. Ooh.
Thank you so much for watching the first board game draft. Down in the comments, let us know what kind of drafts you would like to see us do next. We want to give a big shout out to our channel sponsors, Restoration Games, Lucky Duck Games, and Board Game Geek, and we want to thank you all so much for being here.